Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving headfirst into two of the absolutely most fascinating tales of British endurance ever recorded. We're talking about one fortress made of impenetrable, ancient stone, and another fortress that was forged entirely from human resolve. By the end of our time together today, you're going to see exactly how these two incredibly enduring icons provided a literal blueprint for surviving immense adversity. So let's just jump right in. So what makes a nation unbreakable through a millennium of war and crisis? It's a massive question, isn't it? I mean, when we think of defense, we almost always picture physical barriers, heavy weaponry, maybe having a good geographic advantage. But true survival, the kind that lasts for 1,000 years, that requires a special combination. You need those physical walls to repel the immediate danger, sure, but you also need an iron human will to endure the unimaginable. Let's look at exactly how this dual defense mechanism actually works in practice. All right, let's start with Act 1, the physical fortress. To really understand our first fortress, we have to travel back to the banks of the River Thames, where a literal stone castle has stood its ground for nearly 1,000 years. Its history is just this vast, kind of dark sweep of chronological endurance. It all kicks off around 1078, right after the Norman Conquest, when William the Conqueror orders the construction of the White Tower. He wanted to protect London, sure, but mainly, he wanted to project absolute, terrifying power over the English people. And over time, let me tell you, those stone walls soaked up some incredibly dark secrets. In 1483, royal betrayal strikes. Then, in 1536, Anne Boleyn is executed right inside these very walls on accusations of treason. Another tragic figure, Lady Jane Grey, the 9 Days Queen, met her end here too. But here's the crazy thing. Over the centuries, it was never just a military fortress. It served as a royal palace, a treasury holding unimaginable wealth, a notoriously terrifying prison, and, bizarrely enough, an exotic zoo. I mean, just imagine the prestige of that address, right? You've got the absolute highest English royalty essentially sharing their living quarters with a few imported lions. It is a completely unique historical resume, for sure. Okay, but out of all the wild stories contained within those walls, let's focus on one of its greatest, most chilling mysteries. The year is 1483. Two young princes, Edward V and his brother Richard, are living in the castle. And then, complete silence. They vanish without a single trace, never seen again. Even today, historians passionately argue over what really happened to those boys in those cold, dark stone corridors. It's this really stark reminder that sometimes the very fortress meant to protect you can actually become your ultimate trap. Nowadays, though, the vibe is quite a bit different. Millions of people flock to the tower every single year, and they aren't just coming for the spooky history of missing princes and executions. They are showing up to witness the magnificent crown jewels. We are talking about the priceless symbols of the British monarchy. Glorious crowns, ceremonial swords, and these royal treasures that are literally still used during the coronation of British monarchs today. These artifacts represent the unbroken continuity of the kingdom, all housed safely within an ancient vault. But you might be wondering, who actually protects all of this priceless stuff? Well, they're known as the yeoman warders, or more famously, the beefeaters. But their job isn't just about standing guard over crowns and swords. They have another, very specific, very legendary task. They are the official caretakers of the tower's famous ravens. And why does that matter? Well, because there's this ancient legend that says if the ravens ever leave the tower, the kingdom itself will fall. So these iconic sentries are there to make absolutely sure those birds stay right where they are, keeping both the physical and the mythical heart of the nation perfectly intact. So, there we have the Tower of London, our silent sentry. And ancient stone walls are fantastic for repelling medieval sieges, right? But, fast forward to the 20th century, stone walls cannot stop a mechanized war machine. When the threat shifts to modern continental conquest, a physical fortress just isn't going to cut it anymore. You need a human fortress, an iron will. Which brings us to Act 2, the human fortress. We're shifting gears now from cold stone to a really urgent moment in modern history, guided by the man who literally became that human fortress, Winston Churchill. Born back in 1874 at Blenheim Palace, Churchill was this guy with just intense intellect and sheer determination. Long before he ever reached the highest levels of politics, he was a soldier, a war correspondent, and an author. All of those gritty experiences forged him for what was to come. In May 1940, he becomes prime minister. By 1945, he helps secure victory in Europe. In 1953, he actually wins a Nobel Prize, and he eventually passes away in 1965 at the age of 90. But I want to pull our focus to that second point on the timeline, May 1940. Put yourself right there in this moment. It is May 1940.
Nazi Germany is rapidly, systematically conquering country after country across Europe. Much of the continent has already fallen. Britain is staring down the very real, very terrifying threat of an imminent invasion. The dread here is totally existential. So many people genuinely feared the nation was about to be entirely defeated. The physical walls of Britain, the English Channel itself, suddenly felt very, very fragile.
But in the face of that overwhelming terror, instead of surrendering, Churchill uses his greatest weapon of all, his words. "We shall fight on the beaches." Just let that breathe for a second. In a moment when total defeat felt entirely possible, he delivers speeches that inspired millions of people to remain strong no matter how desperate the situation became. He essentially took his own personal determination and turned it into a protective, invisible shield for a nation facing its absolute greatest challenge. He became the fortress. Later that same year, Germany launches the Battle of Britain, sending hundreds of aircraft to just devastate British cities and airfields. And it was the Royal Air Force that fought incredibly bravely and successfully defended the country from the skies. Once again, Churchill captured the sheer magnitude of their sacrifice with this amazing poetic power. He praised those brave RAF pilots by saying, "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few." But listen, Churchill knew perfectly well that a fortress cannot stand alone forever. During the war, he worked incredibly closely with Allied leaders to actually turn the tide. Churchill, U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, and Soviet leader Joseph Stalin all came together. And despite having some pretty massive political differences, they collaborated to plan the ultimate defeat of Nazi Germany and to shape the entire geopolitical future of post-war Europe. Talk about an unlikely trio getting the job done. So here is where things get super interesting. The year is 1945. Germany surrenders, victory in Europe is officially achieved. Now, you would think the grand architect of this incredible survival story would just be handed the keys to the kingdom indefinitely, right? Well, history loves irony. Later that very same year, Churchill actually lost the general election. Yes, despite leading the nation through its absolute darkest hour, the public voted for a change in peacetime leadership. Yet, as our sources point out, his leadership during the war had already permanently, unquestionably secured his place in history. And you know, his legacy extended way beyond the battlefield and the halls of Parliament. Churchill wasn't just a politician, he was a deeply talented writer and historian. In 1953, he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature, specifically for his historical writings and those incredible, mobilizing speeches we just talked about. When he finally passed away in 1965 at the age of 90, Britain gave him a full state funeral, which is one of the highest honors the nation can possibly offer. Millions of people around the world mourn the passing of the leader who simply refused to surrender.
And finally, let's talk about the enduring legacy.
So why do we still care about an ancient stone castle and a mid-20th century politician today? Well, because the tower's stone walls and Churchill's iron words offer us a profound blueprint for withstanding the ultimate test of time. They define the resilience of their eras through power, ambition, courage, and sheer determination. So looking at the crazy world we live in today, it really makes you wonder, what will be the enduring symbol of our generation? What fortresses are we building right now that people will look back on 1,000 years from today? It's something to think about. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions.